Hi everyone, this is the pre-lecture for demand and supply. Now this topic is really synonymous with the subject itself. If you tell people, I'm an econ student or I've studied econs, people will immediately ask, oh, so you know demand and supply. Alright, this is the foundation to many things that we see around us today, as well as the foundation to many other business subjects. So let's have a short introduction on what this topic is all about. Now, last week we mentioned that econs is a subject that studies human behavior. Now, demand is controlled by consumers. When you go and buy something, you demand a good or a service, so you are a consumer, you control the demand of it. Okay? So when we study this topic, we want to know, how does the consumer usually behave? Alright, is there a pattern to our buying behavior? Consumer is in charge of the buying in the market, in the economy. Alright, so consumer buy things. So what is our behavior pattern? Okay, this topic will tell you that. Alright, and we also want to know, how do the consumer react when certain changes around them occur? For instance, the consumer may become richer. Alright, or there can be some trends that changes the market in terms of taste and preferences. What will happen? Okay, how will the consumer react? Will they buy more or will they buy less? Alright, so this is what this topic is going to tell us. Now in econs, we use a fair bit of diagrams to explain some of the theories that you will come across. Okay, so what you see now is a diagram. Let me give you a short introduction. What is it? Okay, now this is a two-axis diagram. Alright, you remember from your mathematics. Okay, now this is the zero origin. Okay, so here the value is 0. Okay, there's two axes. The vertical one is called y. The horizontal axis is called x. Okay, so from the origin, on the y-axis, the vertical axis, when I move higher up, the value goes up. Okay, move lower down, the value comes down. Alright, on the x-axis, when you move to the right, the value goes up. When you move to the left, the value comes down. Okay, so what is this kind of diagram used for? Is meant to show data relationships between what these two axes are measuring. Okay, so these two axes can measure anything. Okay, when it's used in many different forms of subjects. In econs, in this demand and supply diagram, we use the two axes to measure. On the y-axis is a price. Okay, on the x-axis is a quantity of goods and services. Alright, so price of goods and services and quantity of goods and services. Now how does it work? Now from the origin, if the price is higher, so the value of the price goes up. Okay, follow the mouse, you go up. Alright, if there's a higher quantity of goods in the market, alright, the value goes higher, it moves to the right. Okay, so this demand and supply diagram shows you the relationship between the price of the good and the quantity that's being bought or sold. Alright, it shows you a relationship. Now when we think of our behavior as a buyer, as a consumer, how do we buy, or how much do we buy when the price is at different levels? For example, when the price is very high, can you see the price is very high? Okay, usually we cannot afford, we'll buy at very low quantity. Can you tell that the quantity is actually very, very low? Okay, the price is very high, we buy a small amount because we can't afford to, or we don't want to buy it when the price is so high. Okay, when the price is very low, can you see the price is very low, we buy a much larger quantity. Okay, this is how we usually behave. Now, of course, between the two extreme, rather extreme points, we have points in the middle. Alright, when it is not so expensive, okay, we buy more compared to this point, okay? And when the price goes higher, alright, the quantity that we buy becomes lesser. Okay? Now, so all these dots can represent our behavior. How much do we buy when the price is at different levels? Alright, so when the price is high, we don't really feel like buying. Alright, when the price is low, we want to buy a lot. Okay, so these dots will measure our usual buying behavior. Now, so when we connect the dots, okay, you have a line that looks like this, okay? So this represents our usual buying behavior, okay? Why do we behave in this way? Now, because in the law of demand, in this topic, you learn about the law of demand, okay? It's a law that describes our behavior, okay? When things are expensive, at higher price, we buy lesser, okay? When the price is low, we buy more. So lower quantity at higher price, okay, and higher quantity at lower price. Now take a moment to reflect. Do you behave like this when you buy things on your own? You see that the price is good, is low, you're very happy, why do I buy more? Okay, when the price is high, you think that it's not attractive, you don't want to buy or you buy less. Okay, so this law of demand describes most of our behavior as consumers. Now, I'm sure when you think about it again, you don't behave like this all the time. Maybe most of the time, but not all the time. Okay, you look at other people, they may not behave according to what this law says. Now, this is not the only law of demand. Okay, when you progress onwards to university to study economics, there are many other laws, okay? But this is the one that describes most of our behavior, and this will be the one that we are using. Okay, so the law of demand, remember, higher price, we buy lesser. Okay, lower price, we buy more. For neatness and convenience, so usually when we draw the demand curve is one straight line. Okay, in some textbook, they draw it as a curve. Now, it doesn't matter as long as it is a downward sloping curve. Now, look at the line again. We call this a downward sloping curve because from the left to the right, can you see that it's sloping downwards? Okay. We call this a downward sloping curve. Now, the mathematical meaning behind this downward sloping curve is there's an inverse relationship between the two measurements. Inverse means they change in opposite direction. Now, what do we mean? Now, remember what we said earlier. When it becomes more expensive, according to the law of demand, we buy lesser. Okay? So, price goes up, quantity falls. Okay? When price falls, it becomes cheaper, we buy more, quantity demanded goes up. Okay, so this is what we call an inverse relationship. They change in opposite direction. Cheaper, we buy more, okay, so opposite. Expensive, the price goes up, we buy less. Okay, so this is what we mean by an inverse relationship. Okay, so this kind of downward sloping curve, okay, will reflect an inverse relationship between the two measurements. In this case, it will be the price and quantity. Now, other things that you'll be learning this week, we just talk a lot about the buyer, the consumer, okay, who demands for goods and services, right? The buyer of goods and services. Now, we will also talk about the seller of goods and services, okay? Now, obviously, the seller is not a buyer, okay? They will behave differently, okay, in the market. So, you learn about the behavior pattern of a seller. Okay. Now we also think about whether the seller is going to sell more or less when things changes in the market. Okay. In the same way as how we studied whether consumer buy more or less when there's other changes in the market. Now it's not so easy to remember or understand the behavior pattern of a seller. Usually most of us are buyers. Okay. We are the consumer of goods and services. Myself included. I'm not a seller. Okay, I don't open a shop. I don't own a factory. Okay, so this part may be a little bit more difficult to imagine or to understand. All right. Now, you can reflect on your own behavior as a consumer to learn this topic. Okay, to try to experience how it feels like to be a seller. You can consider setting up a store on CCN Day and observe your own behavior pattern when you're selling something. Okay, by experiencing it yourself, you may be able to understand this part a bit better. Alright, see you guys in the lecture.